I realized I might have a problem, that I read a bit too much. This book 100% surprised me. And then we went back into the crazy. I actually gave both books 5 stars. And when I tell you this book is so spicy. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Alex, and today's video we're gonna be talking about all the books I read in May. I honestly couldn't decide if I wanted to make this video because I feel like everyone and their dogs is doing reading wrap-ups on YouTube. Even though I want to talk about the books I'm reading, I'm a relatively new content creator, and I know that you just can't stand out if you do what everyone's doing. So please do let me know if you like this video and if you want me to keep making them. Otherwise, I'm gonna come up with more creative ideas to talk about books or book related things. I also know this video is a tiny bit late, and that's because I spent 2 weeks deciding if I want to make it. It's true, I spent 2 weeks deciding if I want to make it and if it's worth my time and if it's gonna be something you guys enjoy, instead of just sitting down and filming, which is very classic for me. It doesn't matter because we're here. And today we're drinking a sparkling kombucha for this video, so let's get into it. Delicious. I have my iPad here and I wrote some notes on all of the books I read. First book I read in May was Pucking Around. I started this in June, but I finished it in May. It's a really long book. I think it's 700 pages. And this was my first Why Choose romance. I went head first into Why Choose because I didn't really know much about it, and most of the books I read, I like to go blind into them. I might read the back of the book or I might just not and let it surprise me, and this book 100% surprised me. A Why Choose romance basically involves our FMC and 3 love interests, and this is a hockey romance. And when I tell you this book is so spicy, okay, get ready because you don't know what's coming for you. I was on holiday in Greece and I told myself, I want to get out of my comfort zone. I want to try something that probably wouldn't be my first pick when it comes to the books I'm reading. So that's how I ended up picking Pucking Around while I was on the beach. I gave it 3 stars because there was something that really annoyed me about this book, and it was the fact that we have our FMC and then 3 love interest, so it's an MMMF romance, and I just felt like one of the love interests was there just so that we can say it's an MMMF romance. I felt like her connection with the other 2 was so much stronger, and it could have been left at our FMC and her 2 love interests, but for some reason we added a 3rd one in, and I didn't like it. I didn't like his chapters. I kept skipping them. This is a 4 people POV as well. And I was like, it's too many. Like, I can't be interested in this many love interests. It's very spicy. And at some points, the plot is shaking, okay? Because the amount of spice scenes that are in this book, some of the couples would have been better off just pairing up together and leaving the others behind. And also there's a lot of spice. I've already reiterated how many spice scenes are in this book, so I think you get the point. Then I read the Book of Azrael. These are, by the way, in chronological order according to my Goodreads, but I finished the Book of Azrael, which I gave 5 stars. Our FMC Diana and the MMC Samkyo, but he goes by Liam, which is a totally different conversation because why does he have such a like fantasy book name being called Samkyo? And then why are we calling him Liam? I need some explanations, okay? Basically, our FMC is a monster and she's chained and tied to this horrible, horrible man. And basically she escapes, runs away, and ends up meeting Samkyo, which I think he's the world ender, so he's a god. They go on this like adventure together. It was really good. I loved it. Okay, I tried reading the 2nd book and then I DNF'd it. Basically, the 1st book ends on somewhat of a cliffhanger. Something really big happens, and then the way our FMC behaves in book number 2 is just insufferable. Like, she's a bit of a villain in book number 1, but then she becomes a massive villain in book number 2. And to me, it was just like, there's no growth there. It feels like she's just stuck in the same self-destructive phase for the entire book, and quite frankly I was getting bored. I got annoyed, and I stopped reading it. And it was such a shame because I gave the 1st book 5 stars and I didn't understand why the author had to take this direction. Whereas our MMC, he's like a golden retriever, I'd say. He's very much like in love with her, into her, and he's putting up with a lot of her shitty behavior. At some point I think our FMC needed to be sat down and told to just snap out of it. Maybe I'll pick this series up back again and give it a second shot in a few years time. Okay, so the next book we read in May was Fury Bound. I have a vlog out where I read this book with you guys. Fury Bound is a sequel to Dire Bound, which came out last year, and I was really excited. I pre-ordered the book and I was really looking forward to reading more about the story. And I think the more I sit on Fury Bound, the less I like it. And I think it's because I'm watching other people's reviews. I think when I first read it in May, I gave it 4 stars. I gave Dire Bound 4 stars. But I think the more I sit with Fury Bound, I realize there's like a lot of the spark that was in book number 1 was basically lost. Those of you who haven't read Dire Bound, it's basically our FMC Marin, and she is like really poor. She lives in this kingdom where you have like the king and the military, which are basically these soldiers, I guess, that are bound to dire wolves. And dire wolves are just like massive wolves, I guess, and they have a similar connection the way dragon riders have with their dragons in Fourth Wing. Marin's sister goes missing, gets kidnapped. She joins the recruitment process for these soldiers in order to hopefully become bound to one of these wolves and hopefully have a higher chance of finding her missing sister. For me, the romance felt really lust forward rather than building like on an emotional connection. I feel like the ending was not as like crazy for me. I think it felt a bit like the story was fully wrapped up and then we just like added this extra thing at the end to then be able to write the next book. Also, I think a lot of stuff happened in book number 2. Like it's a lot more action-packed. There's a lot of stuff going on and it felt at some points like I was reading a much longer book than like a 600-page book. But overall, I liked it. I'll be reading the next book, but I did have some issues with it, which is why I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was A Ruin of Roses, and I gave this book 2 stars. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, where we basically have this kingdom under a curse. So we have our FMC, and she's like relatively poor, and she lives in this home with like her siblings, and her father is like really sick. She ventures out into this like forbidden forest or like scary forest at night to basically collect these plants that are going to help be the remedy for her father's illness. And she comes across the MMC and gets kidnapped by him. And he is a dragon shifter, but a dragon with no wings because his wings have been cut off as far as I'm aware. So he's like this big beast that can't fly and he's stuck to the castle. He's been cursed by the demon king and he's stuck in the castle with like all of these demons and he can't leave. And you know there's a curse on this kingdom, but you don't know what it is. You don't know what you can do to break the curse, basically. It's hard to say what was wrong with this book. I think I just didn't love the vibe of the world. It ends in a way that I didn't like. You have, I guess, a big reveal, which is what the curse is and what you need to do to break the curse. But like I kind of saw it coming because it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so you can probably assume what you need to do to break the curse. The way it ended, I just didn't love the ending as much as I thought I would. Yeah, I think that's about everything I have to say about this book. The next book I read was Nectar of the Wicked, and I gave this book 5 stars. This is a fae romantasy. This kingdom is split into different worlds. You have the human world, the fae world, and then this like middle world. And our FMC lives in this middle world, even though she's a fae. She has been basically raised by this human woman whose daughter has been kidnapped. So in order to get her daughter back, this mother figure, I guess, has been looking after our FMC her whole life, and now she's taking her to this market to try and swap our FMC out for her real biological daughter. But obviously this doesn't work out as expected. This woman ends up getting killed by one of the fae, and our FMC now is basically free to live her life, but she learns that her mother has left behind a lot of debt, so she needs to start working in a brothel. Now our FMC is a virgin. She goes in to meet with her first client and learns that this is a fae king who wants her as his bride. So he's gonna take her to her kingdom and marry her. And it's a very strange premise. I think the brothel element was definitely a bit odd because you knew something was gonna happen, but like it was really hard to know where the story was gonna go. I actually ended up reading both books. I think this is a duology. It's definitely, I would say, on the darker side. So if that's something you're interested in, then definitely give this book series a go because I really loved it. I read book number 2 straight after and I really liked the way it came together. I like the way it wrapped up. I think at points it was a bit slow, but then it picked up and it was fine. So I actually gave both books 5 stars. I loved it. And if I have a good time, I'm gonna give it 5 stars, okay? I'm not that picky because at the end of the day, I'm here to read and have a fun time. And I hope that's the case for you guys as well. Okay, and then what happened after I read this book series is I watched Off Campus, same as everyone else because everyone's watching Off Campus. And I really loved it. And I wanted to see what happens in the second book. So I ended up reading The Mistake and I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it as much as I thought I was gonna love because I was obsessed with Off Campus season 1 and I really wanted to love book number 2, which is Logan's story. So in this book, Logan meets Grace and she is a virgin and he's very much the player stereotype. It starts quite spicy like straight away, but then something happens and they have like, I guess, an argument or like a breakup. Logan then decides he actually really likes this girl and tries to win her over for the remainder of the book. I think I didn't love the premise too much. Logan is basically pining after someone else in book number 2, which if you've watched the show, you probably have an idea who that is. I just didn't love that that's the start of the book and that's like the setup because he seems very much into this other person rather than our FMC Grace. I also feel like the vibe of Logan from the book was different than Logan in the show. In the book, they made him so much more of a player, like he's sleeping around all the time, which I don't really love, but these books were also written quite a while back, so I know that was like all the hype back in the day. In the show, he's so much more like wholesome. You don't actually see him like hooking up with anyone. He doesn't come across like a player. He's all about like family and dealing with things, and you see him like bond with his sister in the show, which I really liked. So I think the vibe was a bit off for me in the book compared to the show. I think they definitely made him so much nicer in the show. I didn't love this book as much as I thought I would, so I gave it 3 stars, but it was still like an easy, fun read, like very contemporary romance, a bit of palette cleanser for me personally between like all these dark romances and romanticies. And then we went back into the crazy and then we went back into the crazy reading with Her Soul to Take. Now this, I would say, this is a standalone and I would say it's like a monster romance. So our MMC is a demon and I'm gonna try and insert some art about the way he's described because I had to Google this because at some point I was like, okay, this does not make any sense. This guy does not come across hot at all. So this is like a dark romantasy and it's also like very spicy. Our FMC is from this like small town, but she's moved away and now she's come back to this small town. And he meets our MMC who is a demon and basically he's like trapped in this town by this evil family who has a book, a grimoire, I guess, a book that has his real name. If you've read some like demon romantasy, then you know you can always summon a demon by using its real name. And that's the case. So he's being basically summoned by this like evil family who is continuously trying to get him to do their dirty work. And he just like wants to escape, get rid of them and like go back to hell. But this evil family in this town has been like in this town for a very long time and they are a bit of a cult, so they believe that down in the mines there's this like dark god who lives there. They're trying to bring this dark god back to life and they basically worship him. They're definitely giving cult, doing weird things in the woods in the middle of the night wearing weird masks vibe. So the book is basically about our FMC and MMC journey towards trying to stop all of this craziness from happening. Also, this evil family is trying to like sacrifice people in order to try and bring this god back. So there's like a lot going on and it's very dark, like the vibes, the atmosphere is very dark. Like our FMC lives basically in like a cabin in the woods kind of thing. Like she's surrounded by just like dark woods. I honestly loved it. I had so much fun with it. But I wish there were like more books in the series like following this couple because there are more books in the series, but they're like interconnected standalone, so they follow like a different couple and the story does not fully end in book number 1. So the story continues in book number 2, but the couples that we follow are different. So this is quite an unusual setup from like interconnected standalones where you follow one couple with their journey and then another couple with a different journey. This is basically like the same journey through book 1 and 2, but you follow one couple and then another couple. Why am I talking so fast? It's very different than the way demons I think are portrayed in previous books I've read. That's why I think I'm calling it a bit of a monster romance, but I don't know, it depends what you guys think is a monster romance. So I gave Her Soul to Take 5 stars because I really loved it. I loved the way the story ended and I might read book number 2. I'm just not always keen in reading about another couple's story. I really love the couple in book number 1, and I wish their story would have been continued because I would have been reading that book 100%. Next book I read was Broken Dove, which I read in the same vlog as Fury Bound, which I'm gonna link here. So if you want to watch that, then please do go ahead to learn more about my thoughts and like some quotes and basically my thoughts as I'm actively reading the book. I have mixed feelings about Broken Dove, okay? Broken Dove is the sequel to Silver Elite. It's basically a dystopian romance. These people who are called modified because they have all these special powers and they can talk telepathically with each other, but the government, I guess the big government, doesn't want them around. So if you're found out to have these like telepathic powers, you risk getting killed. So a lot of people live in hiding, they live in fear, and our FMC is obviously a telepathic speaker. She's a modified, and her uncle gets killed in book number 1 at the beginning because he's found to be a traitor. She goes through the recruitment program and basically joins this military, pretending to be a normal person who doesn't have powers. Something I think everyone should know about this series is that it does involve a love triangle. I know some people think that's a spoiler, but for me, I think I'd rather know before I get invested and I start reading it. And it's one of those love triangles that will frustrate the hell out of you, okay? I gave book number 2, Broken Dove, 4 stars, but to me personally, it like pissed me off and it disappointed me, but I still like the book and I thought it was well written, and I'm gonna read book number 3, which is why I feel so conflicted about it. I think the direction that the romance took was just really disappointing for me. I'll be reading book number 3 and hopefully the story is gonna be turned around and saved, because right now things are looking a bit rough, okay? The next book I read was Warrior Princess Assassin, and I gave this 5 stars and I personally really loved it. So this is a Why Choose romance, is an MMF romance, and it's relatively low spice for a Why Choose. Now, obviously, if you've been watching this video, you know that my introduction into Why Choose was pucking around, which is crazy. So I was a bit apprehensive going into this story. But basically, Warrior Princess Assassin is about 3 people. Some people online get confused about the title, thinking it's about the same person, but it's not. We have a warrior, a princess, and an assassin. The majority of the book is around building this emotional connection between the characters. And unlike in Pucking Around, I felt like this book did the emotional connection between the characters much better. The relationship between the warrior and the princess and then the assassin is done really well. And you feel like they're all equally connected, and it makes sense why they would develop a relationship rather than certain pairings within the big relationship feeling like they're more suited to just be together and themselves. I hope I'm explaining that well. I have a princess and she is due to be married to the king of this like other kingdom for like political reasons, has been in love with her childhood best friend who's the assassin, like basically her whole life. They grew up together, but then the assassin's mother got murdered and he was blamed for it, so he got kicked out of the castle and now he's basically become an assassin. So she's very conflicted and she's not sure like what she wants to do. And basically how the story takes off is our assassin Asher, he gets an order to assassinate both the princess and the warrior. This is obviously comes as a shock because this is quite a big deal, and these assassination requests are, I guess, somewhat anonymous. So he doesn't really know who is coming from. He's just there to get the job done, but obviously he can't get the job done because the princess is his lifelong friend. I thought it was nice that it wasn't as spicy. I think sometimes with these Why Choose romances, from my very limited experience of only reading one before, it feels like they can be very spice forward, and this one wasn't, which is what I really liked about it. So I'll be reading book number 2. I thought it was really wholesome. I thought it was really cute, and I might be buying a Fairloop version of it if I find it on Vinted, which you guys know by now, that's just what I do, okay? I spend time on Vinted and I spend my money on Vinted, and don't judge me, please. So we're still in May, and what happened is I caved and I bought Starside. Okay, I bought the Kindle edition first, and then I bought a Fairloop version on Vinted. Okay, I've made a video about this, so if you're interested in my more detailed thoughts on what I thought on Starside, then please do check out this video. Starside is the first Alex Astor book I've read. I gave it 5 stars. It wasn't perfect, and I shared all of my thoughts in the reading vlog, but basically it follows this kingdom where you have the gods and the immortals, which live on one side, and that is called Starside, and then you have all the humans who live on the other side, which is called Storm Side. And in between these two worlds, you have these gates that open and close every 50 years. And every 50 years, a lot of people from Storm Side fight their way through all of these challenges and trials to get to Starside and collect a goblet of magic. Now, this goblet of magic can basically bring you riches, health, and everything you could wish for, which on Stormside is really desired because people are really poor and they're like really struggling to live day to day. Our FMC Aris, she basically goes through these trials and goes through to Starside and meets our MMC Raker, who is the head of the King's Guard. And we don't really learn much about him. This is a very slow burn romance, and I think it's done very differently than the other slow burn romances I've read. Like, this guy is very hard to break. I'm surprised that they built an emotional connection at all. Obviously ends in a massive cliffhanger, and book number 2 is supposed to come out in November this year. So I really liked it. I thought it was a very fast pace. A lot happens in this book, like so much stuff happens in this book. It's got that trial element, which is quite popular, I guess, at the moment. I love a romantasy. I think it would have to be done really badly for me not to love it. And yeah, that's the case with this book. I thought it was a good read. I had a good time. I was really hooked into it. Like, I couldn't put it down. I think I read it in a few days, which is quite quick for me because I do work 9 to 5. If you read a lot of romantasy, I would say Starside is like a hybrid of every single romantasy you've ever read out there. It's got probably an element of like every single thing you thought about or that you've read about, which is fine for me. I know some people like criticized Alex Astor for it, but at the end of the day, like, you can't reinvent the wheel for every single book. If it's good and it works and it's engaging, people will read it, and I read it. So that's, I think, all my thoughts on Starside. Then I read Deathbringer, which I also did for a video, which is my reading for 5 days instead of scrolling challenge that I try and do once a month. Deathbringer is basically like a dark academia fantasy romance. So we have our FMC Viola. I think I called her by the wrong name in the reading vlog, and then I watched it back and I was like, what the hell? But we have our FMC Viola, and she is a bit of like a necromancer kind of thing. Like, she can speak to the dead, is like a gift that has been going through all the generations in her family. Whenever she touches someone that's dead, she can hear their last words, which can tend to be like a riddle or like something about them, which I thought was really fun actually. But then her sister has no magical powers but has been pretending to have magical powers and has been going to this like magical academy for the past like 12 years or something like that. And one night her sister gets murdered, and Viola basically has to come forward and say that she's the one that's been having the magical powers this whole time, because she is quite resentful and she really dislikes the fact that she has these magical powers, that she can like speak to the dead somewhat. And she goes into this academy to try and uncover why her sister has been murdered. Something about me is I love a murder mystery, something that like I can't say no to. There's just something about a murder mystery that hooks me straight away, and this book definitely has an element of that. There's like a hidden bad guy that we don't know who they are, and basically the whole book is about uncovering who is behind all of these murders that start happening more and more. I thought it was really fun. It was also a bit on the shorter side for romantasy, which I love because sometimes they can just be a bit too long, you know, and I don't always feel like reading a 700-page romantasy. I did give it 3 stars because I thought the magic system was really interesting. It did lose me a little bit in like the world building. I think we're introducing a lot of terms and a lot of rules and a lot of ways that the world works, which for me, it kind of lost me a little bit at times. Also, it ends on like a cliffhanger, I guess. You can call it a cliffhanger, but I wasn't like dying for book number 2. I was like, we've been through a lot. We can wrap this up and pick it back up later, which is fine because book number 2 is probably going to come out next year, which I will be reading. So I know the Deathbringer is a new release. So if that's something you're interested in, I think you guys should pick it up because it's really good. And we've been filming for ages and I'm a little bit sweating, so we're going to talk about the last book, which sadly was a disappointing read for me, and it was God of Malice. But basically I talk about this in a reading vlog as well, so if you want more of my thoughts on why I didn't like God of Malice, then please do head to that video. God of Malice is not a romantasy, it's just a dark romance, and it's between our FMC Glendon Glendon, I think that's her name. So our MMC is basically a psychopath, and he doesn't feel emotions the way other people do. And I found that element interesting about like portraying an actual psychopath, how their brain works. I've read dark romance before, and it doesn't have to be perfect. People can do crazy unhinged things. I just think these crazy and unhinged things were not for me. It was one of those things where like I could understand why people love it. I just didn't love it myself, and I think it's just not for me. But I'm gonna give Rina Kent a try again. I'm gonna try one of her other books and see if it's just her as an author that doesn't like perfectly align with me. I think that was my final read for the month of May, which is quite a lot of books. I realized I might have a problem and that I read a bit too much. In June, do let me know in the comments if you want me to do a June reading wrap up, because I've been reading equally as much in June. Yeah, I think that's the end of the video. I don't want to drag it out anymore, but don't forget to subscribe if you love this video, because I'm still trying to grow my channel and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in my next video.